All right, day three of the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit to India was marked by visits to India's iconic monuments in Agra and Jaipur. And after meeting Prime Minister Modi and Jaishankar in New Delhi, Rubio has said that the two countries will get the final trade deal signed shortly. India has raised its concerns with the US visa crackdown in its meetings with Marco Rubio, who has stuck to his America First defense. But the larger purpose of his visit, which was supposed to be a reconnect of the Trump administration with India, is reaching its conclusive end. All eyes are now on the Quad summit between foreign ministers, which is expected to set the stage for the heads of state meeting likely in India this year. We'll talk about this and a lot more with our guest. Joining us on the program is Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat. Major General Dhruv Katoch, defense expert, joins us on the program as well. Mr. Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, is joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. And last but not the least, Mr. Adit Kothari, International Affairs expert, is with us on the program as well. Ambassador Sikri, I'll begin with you, ma'am. Well, you know, it's been a great trip for Marco Rubio. He's spoken to the media. He's made a lot of statements. But what actually stands out is that, despite for the lack of a better word, the hurt India has felt for the treatment meted out to it in the last few months, Marco Rubio has kept a straight face and only come out with what America needs to do at this point in time, keeping their ulterior motives and interests in mind.
Well, I think overall, certainly it is an important visit by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but it's a visit he's making almost 18 months after he joined as Secretary of State. And you are absolutely right, in the last 18 months there's been a lot of turbulence in India-US relations on many issues, whether it is on the trades and the tariffs, whether it's on post-Operation Sindoor, and several other issues. And of course, we've seen, within America, the question of the Indian diaspora, they're feeling extremely uncomfortable and facing a lot of difficulties in their life there, quite different from what it was, from what it had ever been before, including particularly in President Trump's first term. So I think that India has taken a very sober approach to the visit of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We are certainly happy that he has joined, that he has come to India. We also know that the visit is taking place after President Trump's Beijing summit with President Xi Jinping. And the outcome of that summit has not been too positive or too straightforward. There's been no joint statement, there's been no big economic deals. And I think perhaps there is a lot of disappointment from the White House on the results of that visit. So maybe right now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has come for the bilateral visit. Surely that was always on the cards. These dates were always there. But I think the Quad meeting scheduled tomorrow morning, that has been a quick add-on, a welcome add-on. We're very happy that after 18 months almost, since President Trump's second term started, there's now going to be a discussion on Quad. It was really not there all these months, although, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, on the very first day of his joining as Secretary of State, he held the foreign ministers' meeting of Quad in Washington, D.C. in his office. But after that, for the subsequent months, there's been very little. And so I'm glad that, the importance of the Indo-Pacific is once again seems to be high up on the American agenda. It has always been very high on India's agenda because maritime security in the Indo-Pacific is particularly important now. I think after the Strait of Hormuz, what we are seeing there, the Indo-Pacific, maritime security, maritime protecting the sea lanes of communication, whether it's the Strait of Malacca, whether it is the South China Sea, it's very, very important for India. We have a maritime Chennai-Vladivostok corridor with Russia, and that now can go beyond to Murmansk in North Russia. It can go to the Nordic countries. So this is really an important issue for us, and we've been talking about it with Japan bilaterally, with Australia bilaterally, in the absence of any Quad meeting. So I think India has shown that these issues which are of importance to us, whether it is maritime security or trade in the Indo-Pacific or other issues, we are going to talk about them to our partners with or without Quad. I really hope that tomorrow morning's meeting of the Quad will be a positive one, and I certainly hope that there will be a Quad summit before the end of the year. There has been a hint on this from Secretary of State Marco Rubio that perhaps it will take place maybe in America when the G20 meets under America's chairmanship in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. So there might be the Quad summit there at that time. But we will know a lot more tomorrow. I think on the bilaterals, what we can say is that both in during Secretary of State Rubio's call on Prime Minister Modi and during the bilaterals between External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the term used or the outcome was productive. So that is it's a good positive term. It's a term which shows that yes, it was an important time to exchange views on bilateral relations, and I think both sides have been able to understand each other better. India has certainly, in the statement by External Affairs Minister during the joint press conference, he was very clear and straightforward that about India's policy of strategic autonomy, about our multi-alignment, about our relations with many important countries, but at the same time saying that we attach the highest importance to our relationship with America. It's a very consequential relationship, and I certainly hope that as a result of Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit, a lot of issues have been sorted out, and there's been a promise that the trade agreement will be finalized very soon, and we hope that a number of other issues also will be sorted out to mutual satisfaction.
Mr. Vikri, what have you made of Marco Rubio's trip to India? We discussed before his trip that, this sounds like reconciliation or some sort, of a hug after, a fight. But it seems that Marco Rubio is only been doing Donald Trump's bidding, even perhaps speaking the same language at press conferences. So you're muted.
Yeah. It seems to me that the Indian side has done a very good job with Secretary Rubio in widening his perspective on India. His remit from President Trump, quite frankly, was to come to India on a transactional basis, focused on energy, to sell American oil and gas, and to also see if he could do something about selling Venezuelan petroleum. And I think India has shown over these past few days, and hopefully this will continue into the Quad, the wider relationship between these two largest and I would argue greatest democracies in the world, who have so much in common, whether it be strategically, economically, person-to-person ties, and across the board. So that's all to the good. The reality is, though, that the United States, in regard to the Trump administration, is playing catch-up. The meeting of the Quad should have occurred. There should have been consultations with India prior to the Xi-Trump meeting. If indeed these are the two greatest democracies, certainly the largest in the world, there has to be coordination, not just after the fact, but before the fact, particularly when vital strategic issues of both countries are involved. One hopes that the Quad tomorrow will continue this wider view. As you know, the Quad has some 6 working groups dealing all the way from emergency help to space and across the board. And so hopefully that wider view of the relationship between the U.S. and India will continue. But it is perfectly apparent that the United States under President Trump is not a dependable partner. It is one only that is viewed from the American administration side as a transactional relationship, which is not at all what this should be. And I think the lesson here for India is that it's time for India to step forward as a great democracy and a great world power and view its interest as being broader than simply protection of borders, but extending to upholding principles of the UN Charter, which have been in effect and largely kept the world from another world war for 80 years, and have to do with Europe. India's interest, I would argue, and certainly the Joint Maritime Force, where India has taken over command of one of the task forces, indicates that India has a wider security and economic interest in Western Asia. And of course, in regard to the Indo-Pacific and China, the interests are manifest. So I think it's time for India to step forward to keep the relationship with the United States, and hopefully it will get back on the upward trajectory, which it has had largely for the past 30 years, but that it will view its own interest in a wider perspective and make common cause, particularly with the Quad, with other great democracies like Japan and Australia, and provide some of the leadership which has been sorely lacking under the Trump administration.
Fair enough, sir. You're quite right. General Katoch, well, geopolitics is obviously an important part of this trip, but I'm sure India has also expressed its concerns when it comes to the war in West Asia and how the United States needs to understand that buying oil from them is one thing, but the Strait of Hormuz, as well as our relationship with Russia when it comes to energy needs, is a matter that India cannot slip under the carpet.
Thank you, Vineet. Vineet, on the energy issue, I think India has made it very clear that we will buy energy wherever we can get it from. It is a vital interest for the 1.5 billion Indians. And if we get it from Russia or if we get it from elsewhere, we will get it. As far as Venezuela is concerned, we must remember we were buying crude from Venezuela earlier. In fact, the Jamnagar refinery specifically catered for that crude. And it was only when Venezuela came under sanctions that we had to stop buying it. So resuming buying from Venezuela, I don't think is a problem for India. It is not going to be that we'll be buying Venezuelan crude. It is simply a resumption. That is one. Number two, the Strait of Hormuz is a vital concern because the way the situation is in India, while we do not have an energy problem as far as the supply side is concerned, and I think the government has done it very well, in which our supply is coming from multiple points now, and we're not directly dependent on one single source. But the cost factor is becoming tremendous. And if crude continues hovering above the $100 mark, it is already having a very serious impact on India's economy. So we've got to get it back to the $70 to $80 mark. And for that, we require the Strait of Hormuz to open. Now, for the Iranians to say that it is open but we'll charge a toll, I'm afraid that is not opening. Opening means it is going to be free for everybody to move across that strait, which means that the ships will not be stopped by the Iranians, and on the other side it will not be stopped by the Americans either. That is the leverage both sides have gotten with each other. How that is to come about, I hope that some sort of, as and when the agreement comes about, this particular aspect is addressed. Otherwise, we are going to find situations by which even places like Malacca can be blocked, and other choke points can be blocked, and everybody will say, okay, we are going to provide protection for you. And India can very well say that with our base at Galatia Bay, that we'll provide protection to people moving on to Malacca and then charge toll again. Now, if that is going to be the way the world is going to function, I think it'll break that very system of free and open oceans. On the Quad meeting tomorrow, there I'm far more hopeful, because this is the one place where India's strategic interests coincide with that of the United States. And here, I think it is one place where we can work together. On many other places where we cannot work together, the Americans are very hard-nosed in these issues. They will look into their self-interest. And India, fortunately, has also made it very clear. For America, it is MAGA. For India, it is India first. We will do what we have to do, regardless of the consequences. So we will have differences with the United States there. We will work around those differences. How that comes about, we will see. But we will work around it. I think the good old days of following anybody's foreign policy, they are over. We will do what we have to do. And on the Quad tomorrow, I think there'll be there'll be better optics which are coming out, because there our interests actually coincide. Vineet.
Adit is also with us. Adit, it's imperative that India and America work on that trade deal as well. It has also, become a problem that a lot of the H-1B rules that have also, been going under, tremendous changes in the United States affect India the most. Do you think that is also a sore point that, the Prime Minister as well as his team would have put across to Marco Rubio, who went on to defend that every country needs to, check on its immigrants, but that's not the kind of checking that Indians necessarily have to go through when it comes to the United States, because obviously that's technology and technology building exercises that Indian techies have always been a part of.
Sure. I think the H-1B ruling system that was brought in last year was used as a carrot and stick leverage against India. And it was used rather well to sort of tame India into the corner. Having said that, I myself have some reservations with regards to the way the structuring of the H-1B currently exists in its current form. So that is for United States to internally resolve and ensure that, those systems which exist in the United States from an immigration policy perspective are not abused by those coming into the country, which it has been. So that is with the state, where the State Department comes in, and they need to basically address those issues. But coming back to this particular issue of Marco Rubio coming into India, it is a clear direction that, they want to repair ties, they want to restore ties with India. But they need to ensure that, India's concerns are also addressed at the same time, which America has not, or rather repeatedly ensured that they do not take into account. For example, with regards to terrorism is one aspect where Pakistan continues to feature, and a number of journalists were on that particular issue, raising compelling questions to Marco Rubio, which he sort of deflected, where he's using them as an America first policy. So it's almost saying that, we still look at terrorism as good terrorists and bad terrorists, and that is going to be a continuation of the American policy, which is not in favor of India. So India will have to review that particular aspect, and India will have to ensure that strategic autonomy is maintained, and India continues to fend for its own interests. When it comes down to Quad in itself, I think Quad has taken a little bit of a backseat, especially when AUKUS came into existence. Now with China and United States sort of cozying up, and the G2 sort of coming into the foray, I think Quad takes a bit of a dampening, it takes a bit of a hit. I don't think Quad still has that relevance which it had during the Joe Biden regime. I think Donald Trump has largely ensured that, Quad becomes a completely toothless organization. So I think tomorrow's meeting is going to be quite, revealing from that perspective as to what the joint statements are. Vineet.
All right, Ambassador Sikri, let's also focus on the trade agreement that has been pending between these two countries for a long time. Do you think that is only something that would be considered and would be undertaken once the war in West Asia has subsided and India's energy levels and needs go back to pre-war level?
No, I think the trade agreement should be definitely a standalone, because it's been like almost done for such a long time. But of course, internally in America, the Supreme Court judgment has knocked off the earlier graded rates of trade where India was, facing quite a high category. But now it's 10%. Still, nonetheless, the trade deal has to be concluded, and we have to agree with America on the way in which it's going to be conducted, on the concessions, the free access, etc. Mutually beneficial areas that were already under discussion. And are very close to agreement till these tariff things kicked in. So I do hope, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio has indicated that it would happen very soon. A delegation is going to come very soon, but we hope that this time it will actually be concluded. We've always seen in many cases that something is on the verge of happening, and then suddenly there's a drawback, and it doesn't happen. So we just hope that the trade deal will go through. I think on energy security and particularly on counterterrorism, I agree with the previous speaker that this has been a bit of a setback, because earlier India and USA were much closer on counterterrorism, on the need to work together. It was a very dynamic sector for India and USA to work together. But this, at least for America, has certainly taken a back seat after their sudden fondness for Field Marshal Asim Munir, and we have to work much harder at that with other friendly countries, whether it is Canada or UK or Europe, Russia and others, to get back to that. I think on the G2 between America and China, I think that has taken a bit of a backseat. I don't see any movement towards that. Perhaps President Trump expected much more out of that at the summit in Beijing, but I think that President Xi Jinping seems to have, fended that off. He sort of put it on the back burner at the moment. So I think that's why President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio coming in. We saw President Trump's very warm message to India on the occasion of the 250th anniversary celebrations of the United States of America. So I think that we have to take that at its face value and see what we can work together with America on that. We certainly are taking a very sober view of the whole situation, and we are waiting to see what actual results. The trade agreement would be the first deliverable. At the moment, it is the first deliverable on this issue. And on energy security, we've said, yes, we are prepared to buy from America and Venezuela, but we will also buy from a number of other countries. So it's not going to be any kind of an exclusive approach on that. On the investments, we know that, yes, America is one of the largest investors in India, but India has a fairly substantial amount of investment in the US as well, and a lot of analysts in India are talking about that now, the importance of that, the meaning of that, and so on. So I think there is a build back which is happening now, and we have to keep going at that build back, brick by brick, and certainly hope that if Quad comes on board as another deliverable, as another common issue, a shared concern between India and the USA and Japan and Australia, then that will be a big move forward, because immediately after the Beijing summit, President Trump started saying, yes, he's going to talk to the president of Taiwan about the $14 billion arms deal, but that has sort of taken a little bit of a backseat right now. Maybe it will still happen, we don't know. So there are a lot of things in progress, because the Iran deal is so much in the limelight right now, but I don't think it's happening. As of today, the word from Iran is it's not imminent. Whereas Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been saying all through the weekend that it's going to happen, maybe Monday, maybe. So with that taking a back seat, if that does not happen over the next 24 hours or so, then it could be delayed, and that will certainly put a question mark again. That is President Trump going to think of renewed attacks on Iran, because the naval blockade is still there in full force. And that would really be a huge, huge setback for not only for world peace, but for the global economy. And that would be a major threat for India as well, because India is already facing so many headwinds as a result of the Iran war.
All right, fair enough. We have run out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined in and weighed in. We're going to dip into a short break on that note. We'll be back.